The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
And we have a surprise guest from Texas. Mitchell, sign in, please. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, Ralph?
I'm doing pretty well. You're a fellow New Yorker.
I am a fellow New Yorker, but I had lived in Texas in the 80s for 7 years, but this is a Vonage phone system, and I've been living in Buenos Aires, Argentina since 2003.
Whoa,
but I selected...
Are you a Nazi? I'm sorry, that just came off the top of my head.
I'm just a sympathizer. They wouldn't accept me because of my religion.
Oh, okay. They would accept you, believe me. Let's get to a book you just wrote. First of all, what's your last name? Tell the audience about your book and how you came to write it.
My last name is Belacones, and that was the name that originally, that when my grandparents came from Russia, they gave them at Ellis Island. My real last name is too common to even mention, so I write under the name of Belacones because there's a gazillion Mitchell Cohens, so I switched back to the original name.
Okay, I got the impression that you might have been Italian.
No, I like the food, but that's about as far as it goes.
That's a good idea. Keep away from the Italians, because what Frank Sinatra will get you. He and Jilly.
I wasn't a huge fan of Frank Sinatra. I guess to his generation he was somebody, but the movies I saw him in, especially around women, I thought he was a goofball, silly. But whatever, they promote people to be famous and they get a reputation, so they're great because everybody else.
When I think of Frank, I think of him on stage, and I think of the Rat Pack, and I think of his inordinately terrific voice and his phraseology. And he was terrific from that standpoint. You have to, as in any walk of life, separate a man or a woman's work from the type of person or the person that they are. Sometimes you get a good person doing great work, or a great person doing great work. It's rare, just the way it is in life.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead, please.
You can't argue his music. He was brilliant there, no doubt. The one funny story that sticks in my mind was with Frank Sinatra, how he and Don Rickles became buddies. Is Don Rickles was working at a club in Las Vegas, and Frank Sinatra came in, and this is, I don't think they had met to this point. And Don Rickles says, "Oh, we have a celebrity in the audience. Everybody welcome Frank Sinatra. And Frank, make yourself feel at home. Hit somebody."
First time they met.
Frank got a kick out of him, and I think they became buddies after that, as the story goes.
The great story I heard about Rickles and Frank Sinatra. Rickles is coming up as a young comic, and he's a lounge comic, and he's got a date, and he's trying to impress the date, and he knows Frank a little bit, and he goes over to his table where in the restaurant that Don Rickles is having dinner with this prospective coitus interruptus, or whatever you want to call what they're going to have. Anyway, he says, "Frank, could you come over to my table, and just so to impress the woman that I know you?" And a few minutes later, Frank comes over to the table, and Don says, Frank says, "How you doing, Don?" And Rickles says, "Can't you see I'm eating, Frank? Don't bother me.
You topped me on that one. That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. Well, I know a little bit about Don Rickles because Don Rickles grew up in my neighborhood in Jackson Heights. He went to my high school. He went to my grammar school. He went to shul in the neighborhood. He got bar mitzvahed in. And so we worshipped him. He's a very funny guy. There's no question about that.
No doubt, he was brilliant, and he got away with stuff. Even he was the antithesis of politically correct, but everybody knew he was joking. He was so brutally in the opposite direction. I saw him with Denzel Washington on whether it was Letterman or one of those late night shows, and he was with pardon the pun, off-color remarks, and Denzel Washington couldn't contain himself. He was cracking up with no way to describe it.
Yeah.
It was just, because he was an older guy, or just because everybody knew who they were dealing with, everybody just took him that way. But I got a kick out of him growing up. I thought he was the funniest guy ever.
An absolute legend, iconic. At least in Jackson Heights, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think he passed. He left Jackson Heights and became kind of renowned.
He did indeed, and he was an actor as well. He was in movies with the likes of Clark Gable, and he was in a submarine movie with Clark Gable. Can't think of it at the moment, but there are a lot of things I can't think of at the moment. I will ask you, getting back to your book, it interests me. How did it come about? It's obviously about Broadway Joe.
Well, here you go. Broadway Joe was my idol growing up. I grew up on the Upper West Side. It was a little different. I used to play when I was a kid, pickup games in Central Park. I had leather shoulder pads. So I was born in 1955. This was the early 60s, and my brother and I would go out looking for games and usually find them. This is before the park Nazis, fenced off every field that you could play on. And so I was idolizing Broadway Joe, but I was kind of a skinny runt. I was a second-string basketball player, but I loved sports, and I loved playing football. But I wimped out of, when I went to high school, of playing tackle football. Now, I'm turning close to 50, and Buenos Aires starts a 5-team tackle football league. And I hear about it through this friend I was in a pickup basketball game, and we go out to see the game, and they're playing against Panama. In the book, I call it another country because I was afraid of getting sued. Anyhow, Buenos Aires is new. Panama, being close to America, has American coaches, 20 teams. They're slaughtering us, and they're running up the score. I'm on the sidelines, and I'm just on the sidelines of Buenos Aires because there was very few fans. I'm screaming at Panama, trash talking back at them, slapping the Argentine players in the helmet, go send them home in the belly of the plane. You're not going to win the game. Forget about that. Nothing to be ashamed of. You're new, but you need to hurt these people. They're abusing you. Oh, we're going to invite them for a beer afterwards. I said, well, they're not worried about advancing the brotherhood of man when it's 48-0 and they're throwing bombs. So, anyhow, I went off the cuff, and I got a hold of the president. I says, well, how can I get in this league? And they said, how old are you? I said, I'm 49. Well, you want to be a coach? I said, no, I want to play. You want to be a coach? And I was in good shape. I had gotten into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it changed my attitude towards contact. Do you want me to keep rambling, or do you have any questions?
I absolutely do. I appreciate this a lot because I don't like the sound of my voice, but I'm enjoying the sound of yours, so keep it up.
You a good voice, obviously. So anyhow, they never call me back. I show up to camp uninvited, and the fear of contact, I still feared it a little because I'd never really done it. and I just found it the most enjoyable thing in the world. And I got on one team that had a Mexican coach. I liked the guy, but he didn't know any football strategy. I went out and bought a pair of soccer cleats. And the skill level was think suburban junior varsity. But a lot of these guys were rugby players. They could hit like college players. So, I mean, it was a kind of a scary thing, but it was a fun thing. So the first team I was on made me a linebacker, and I finally got to be quarterback about halfway through the season, because that's what I always played in touch football and in college intramural. But, you know, the coach would call a triple reverse in our own 20-yard line to run out the clock in a close game. So I would change up plays, and I was very frustrated. I love the guys on the team. Argentina has some of the warmest people you'll ever meet. They're curious about you. They're nice. It's a magical place. You don't really want to do business with them because that's a whole other story. But so anyhow, they approach me. The league approaches me about starting a new team because they had 5 teams. So they're basically looking for a patsy team. So this is how it's going to, and somebody that had $2 in their pocket to buy the uniforms, not all the uniforms, mostly the jerseys. So they saw the American, a little bit established in life, could do this. So I start up a new team. I take a few guys from the old team with me by hook or crook. One of the ways, there's 2 guys, younger guys, that wanted to come with me, but they weren't allowed to just transfer teams, so they had to fake the league out that they weren't going to play next year unless they could come with me. So I had 3 guys. Some of these teams have 30 players. I mean, it looked like Ohio State on the sidelines. You know, they certainly don't play like them. So you're only allowed 5 foreigners, and I had 4 or 5 guys. I met a guy that was a receiver at Brown. By chance, we went into a sports bar, me and the 2 buddies that came over with me, and I like, dude, you're the president, you don't pay for your beers. He was down here to start a youth hostel. And so he became the real leader. And we had another guy that played he went to Army, and he was a pretty good tight end. No speed, but he could certainly block. And I went over the limit. I found a Canadian farm boy that was kind of like the Forrest Gump of the team. He's 6'2", 220 pounds, supposedly recruited by McGill, fast as lightning. But I was only allowed 5 foreigners. So I asked the league, I says, look, I didn't come out here to die. You got to give me a break. And they said, I got one more foreigner, and can I put him on the team? They said, is he big? I said, I don't know. He's average. And they said, is he fast? I said, I don't know. He's a Canuck. Give him a pair of skates. I'm sure he can move. What do you want from me? If I tell you he's fat and slow, you're going to let me have him? Come on, I'm going to die. So they conceded. Well, with the Americans that they gave me, we had a blast. We won 10 straight. But I shouldn't jump ahead to that. There was one scene. The guy from Brown was like a fraternity guy, and how he became the leader of the team without even stepping on the field. We were all at my apartment having a little party after I rounded up 12 guys. I put an ad in the American paper and in the Argentine paper looking for American football players, social skills not required, you know, just hostile people. We're looking for hostile and mean-spirited. Intelligence is not an issue. So we came up with some guys. We had a team, and we were chugging beers at the house. And one guy had lived in Austria for a couple of years. And the Brown guy that we had met, who was the receiver for Brown, we had met at the sports bar, challenged him to a chugging contest, and they bet. He bet him he'll run around the whole block naked. And the other guy says, I'll wear a T-shirt saying B-Man is the best. That was Brian. If I lose. That was the remainder to the contract. So Brian didn't know this guy lived in Austria. The guy beat him, and Brian started taking his clothes off in my hallway. I said, "You crazy?" Anyhow, he ended up running around the whole block naked. We're all scared to death we're going to get arrested. Somebody hands him his clothes, and he says, "Hold on to him. I got to cool down first." And then he starts walking off. "Let's find a place to drink." He became the hero and the leader of the team. So anyhow, it was a blast. But then the book is all fun and games, but then it gets into Argentine politics and all the corruption that goes on and the cheating and the scamming. It's still done in a humorous way. But put it this way, Argentina...
Do you have an experience as a journalist as well as an organizer of football leagues?
No, I've written... I've pretty much survived on property and this and that, but I've written 2 other books. I'll finish off.
That's some experience as a journalist.
Yeah. Not bestsellers by any stretch of the imagination. Anyhow, getting back to finish off the football book, the preface, which can be read for free on Amazon by just clicking on it, really deals with why I left New York City and and the differences between the 2 cultures. And it actually started out as a little essay on its own, and then I thought it would be the perfect introduction for this book.
Would you paraphrase just that? Because I and many of my friends have left New York for various reasons, and all of them interesting. So give me a little preface to the preface as to what inspired you to leave the city of New York.
Let me ask you a quick question. Did you ever read Bernard Shaw? Because he used preface to the preface often.
Oh. Okay.
The British.
But George Bernard Shaw, of course.
Yeah.
He's my hero.
Because listen to
Pygmalion.
When you said
Yeah.
It became My Fair Lady. When you said the preface to the preface, that's the first chapter of my book. It explains why I chose to write the preface that has nothing to do with football.
Yeah, I'm a Shavian, so we're going to get along fine.
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, well, what thinking man isn't? Put my British accent on. The preface to the preface. Tell me why you left New York.
Well, here's the deal. I left in 2003, and I was a single guy, and I met some nice women, mostly on my block, which was too close for comfort. But I found dating was very difficult. Everybody told me, I should never have said that. A good majority of the women would be interested in telling you I need a Classic 6 off Riverside Drive. They were more interviews than they were dates. And I went to Argentina on vacation, and the women were so polite, and even what you might consider higher class women would never ask you questions about financial questions like that came out in New York. Plus, I'm not a fan of winter. I could do without winter, and I grew up in New York, and I guess I needed a little adventure and a little change. And frankly, I had bought in the 90s my apartment dirt cheap and had a chance to sell it at a pretty good profit. And at the time, Buenos Aires was in crisis. So I sold a 1.5 bedroom between Central Park West and Columbus, and I bought 2 palaces here. In 2003, I bought a French-built building with 12-foot high ceilings, 2 maids' rooms, 3,000 square feet. You would think Andrew Altburn called my building the Dakota of who writes lots of buildings. He writes books about the luxury buildings in New York. Called my building the Dakota of Argentina. Wow. I paid $235 in 2003. And
problem was they wanted $100 down.
That's
an old joke. Congratulations on your financial acumen. That's the best I can tell you.
I think it was more, I would call it more Forrest Gump style that I landed here. I didn't really plan it. I just got a little bored when I was here on vacation and let a real estate agent take me around, and I said, I can't believe this is true. I can't believe that I could live like this. And it took a lot of doing, a lot of nerve to go to a strange place where I didn't know anybody, but I just felt I needed a big change. How about yourself? What got you to leave?
Let me tell you my biggest buy and my greatest buy. It was in the 70s. I bought a bag of weed, had no stems and no seeds. It was absolutely pure. And it doesn't compare, of course, to the financial gains that you experience, but it far outweighs your experience in pleasure. I can assure you. How about me? Why did I leave New York?
I think in our brief exchange, you mentioned the Air Force.
I was in the Air Force, had to join. There was a war going on, and I was fortunate enough to spend my time after Texas in basic training in tech school in San Antonio and in where the hell was it? It was another part of Texas that was horrible, if you can imagine that.
Where's the military? Eagle Pass, Eagle Rock? No,
I can't believe I can't think of where I went to tech school, but it'll come to me in a little bit. And then I was stationed in California, northern part of California, halfway between Sacramento and San Francisco. Didn't get to go to Vietnam, which elated me, and got out, spent 7-8 years in Sacramento, came to the Bay Area, and have spent my time in the East Bay, right across the bay from San Francisco. And I'm living my life. What can I tell you?
How do you like that whole area compared to New York? Because, that was when I was leaving New York. I didn't know where to go. Three top considerations were San Francisco, Las Vegas, and I forget the other place. And were you happy? Or have you been happy all along with San Francisco?
I've been very happy in the North Bay Area. I lived some time in San Francisco, most of the time in Oakland, or a little city where I live, which is right across the moat from Oakland. It's called Alameda. And
I've heard of it, yeah.
It's beautiful climate-wise. It's got a lot of parks. I raised my kid here. Good school system. I love it. The weather is great, and that's what I'm about. I spend a lot of time at the Washington Park. I'll tell you the story, because I heard in the last day or so this story. I'm a big baseball fan, whether or not you know it. And there were 3 future Yankees. One of them was Charlie Silvera. Another one was Dr. Bobby Brown. And the third one, his name escapes me, and I'll get to it in a second. But on Pearl Harbor Day, the 7th of December, 1941, these 3 Yankees were playing at Washington Park. They played youth ball, and they were playing at Washington Park in Alameda that morning. It was Dr. Bobby Brown. It was Silvera, and boy, the name escapes me. It'll come to me in a second.
Joe DiMaggio had come and gone well before then. I don't even want to make you that old.
He wasn't there, but the same Charlie Silvera, I found out in the same interview yesterday, was in Europe with with Joe DiMaggio during the war. They played Army ball together, so they went way back. But the player that it was Bobby Brown, Charlie Silvera, and somebody else. I'll think of it in the middle. Gil McDougall came later. All these guys were from San Francisco. San Francisco was the Yankee. DiMaggio came out of there. It was the gateway
breeding ground.
Lazzari was one, and the third Yankee, Jerry Coleman. Speaking of radio and announcers, one of the greats. Go ahead.
No. The name struck as I knew him as an announcer.
Right. But he was a slick fielding second baseman in his day who was an integral part of what was the greatest dynasty in baseball history. That was the Yankees between 1949 and 53. They won 5 consecutive World Series championships. And Silvera was one that played on all 5 teams. Dr. Bobby Brown wasn't. He played on one in 1951. Jerry Coleman went into the service, went back to Korea. He was a Korean, a war hero. Flew planes in Korea.
Oh,
and
I got to ask you one question.
Sure.
Did you stay loyal to the Yankees, or did you switch over to the Giants when they moved out to San Francisco?
Well, I was a New York Giant fan, and
Polo Grounds.
But yes, Polo Grounds. Or early on in my life, my grandfather took me to the Polo Grounds, even before Willie Mays got called up in 1951. And I was a little kid, 5, and I sat and absorbed everything. The changing configuration of the team when they brought Willie up. I knew it all. Alvin Dark, Eddie Stanky in those days, Whitey Lottman. My point is, when they left, I really floundered. I couldn't be a Yankee fan. I became a Brave fan for a while. I remember in '57, they had announced, the Giants did, that they were leaving, and I rooted very hard for the Braves in the World Series. I was a National League guy.
That's me.
Never could get into the Yankees to root for them, but boy, did I worship them. I mean, those Yankee teams were so great. And looking back, it's ironic that one of the podcasters on my network is Peter Golenbach, who has become a terrific friend and a wonderful contributor to the network. And he's got all these stories about the Yankees that are so terrific. His great books, Dynasty, started it all. So I'm living my dream life, just being part of all of this and getting a good show out every day. That's the most interesting sports and entertainment and social commentary talk show on the internet. And it's
well, you got a new fan here. I'm looking forward to. Are the older shows are recorded that I can find them on the net?
If you go to YouTube and you punch in "Comfortably Zoned," just on YouTube.
Comfortably Zoned. Okay.
All you got to do is that, and you come up with thousands, literally, of hours of archive shows. Every one that we've ever done is on YouTube. So that's one of the great advantages of passing all this down, to future generations, because most of us, quite frankly, this is our last word. Most of the old writers that grace our airwaves, and retired players and coaches, and we've got a lot to say about the changing of times, and
Hi, Mitch again.
Hey, Mitch again. I'm Ralph again, and we are back. We had some technical difficulties. We spoke about two minutes or so, and we were off the air. We're closing it out, and I just wanted to tell you what a terrific guest you've been, and I hope I can get you to come back from time to time to give us updates on what you're doing and on the book. So first, tell us about the Kindle thing again, so in case anybody missed it, where they can get the book on Kindle, and give us all that information.
The book is on Amazon. If you punch in Broadway Jose, Mitchell Bellacone, it'll come up. It's $2.99. It's $2.99 for the Kindle version, $9.99 for the hard copy. And you can read, I think, I don't know if you need Amazon Prime, but you can read the whole preface and the preface to the preface on Amazon without paying a dime. And that doesn't have much to do with football, but it's the backstory and how I ended up there and why I left New York, and probably better written in the book. Segueing over back to your baseball story, I had one thought. One creative idea with baseball. And I could be off the mark here because I don't know baseball all that well, although I've been a Mets fan for a long time. One thought, the most frustrating thing to me about baseball is you can have a great pitcher on a lousy team, and his ERA can be great, but he's not looked at that highly because his one loss, which happens to the Mets all the time, including this year. And my solution for this is have a new statistic, adjusted one loss, which means you take, I don't know what variables you'll punch into the equation, but what you're basically doing is taking the average runs that he would have behind him if you averaged out the league average of runs. So his forecasted one loss, if he just had the average runs behind him instead of the measly amount of runs he's getting on his low batting average team, his projected one loss if he was on on an average team. And that way you could, instead of seeing a 7-7 pitcher with a 1.71 ERA, you could see he might be 12-2 even if he was just on an average team. And that's a lot of frustration for me because you can't judge a pitcher by his one loss.
And as a Mets fan, a perfect example of that would be Jacob deGrom. This year, yeah. Absolutely. And that's when it came to me. As a long-suffering Met fan myself, I want to offer my condolences that you've had to put up with the same crap that I have all these many years. It has.
And yeah, thank you. I'm 62 years old. I've been a Jet fan since I saw them as the Titans in the Polo Grounds when I was 5.
So did I. I was a little older, but Marty Rose, who's a podcaster on this network, and we were 10, 11, and 12. Maybe by the time the Titans got here, we were a little older. But we would sit in that empty Polo Grounds and freeze our asses off and watch Al Doro throw to John Maynard or Maynard. I can't think of it. I think it was.
Was it Al Dowling or Al? No,
Al Doro was his name.
I don't even remember the names.
Yeah,
too young.
But Bulldog Turner was the coach, and they became the Titans. Titans became the Jets. And they moved to Shea Stadium. Right after it was built in '64, the same Shea.
Yeah, go ahead. One quick story on Shea Stadium.
Okay.
We had season tickets to the Jet games in 67, 68. My father was business partners with the playwright Willie Gilbert. This is in the book. This is how one of the ways I first started to love football. He was one of the three writers of How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying.
I remember that on Broadway very much. There was a little guy that played in that. Do you remember his?
Morse, maybe?
Yes, Robert Morse. He was a little song and dance man, and he played a good part. That was an excellent Broadway show.
He was brilliant.
Yeah.
So anyhow, we're riding out to Shea Stadium, and it's nothing but a massive traffic jam, and we're stuck in this traffic jam with the stadium smack dab in your face. I mean, if you look out your window, the only thing you can see is Shea Stadium because we're right upon it. So a bunch of kids in their 20-somethings in the car over signal Willie to pull down his window, and he pulls down his window, and they say, "Excuse me, sir, could you tell us how to get to Shea Stadium?" And so he kind of gives them the dirty smirk they asked for, and then kind of rolls up the window. So this is the playwright, and I never went out to a football game again with Willie Gilbert, the playwright, where he didn't roll down his window to the neighboring car and steal that line. And he'd ask the neighboring car, "Excuse me, sir, could you?" Which was a line by, I think the Clifford Odets line was also a playwright, had the line, "Mediocrity plagiarizes, geniuses steal boldly."
That's beautiful. That is.
Yeah, that was one of my. Thank you. One of my first pleasurable football stories, that you get. That's what all this, the interaction between friends and going to the games and all the crazy stuff. I remember leaving a Bills game in Buffalo with a buddy of mine from college, and there was like 18 of us in the back of this pickup truck, and his brother-in-law was driving drunk. Now you look on it as a terrible thing, but back then it was, looked on a different way, sadly. But at the time, I just remember the cop telling him, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And the driver, Michael's brother-in-law, goes to him, "Hey, give me a break. My sister-in-law's got the crabs." And the cop laughed and let him go. You meet character.
That's New York humor too.
You're right.
Wow. So when you were on the Upper West Side, did you go to the 96th Street Y?
No, I went to, there was one on the East Side that I went to. They had like a day camp there. I'm forgetting which one it was.
Okay.
It was a YHA on the East Side, and I'm drawing a blank on it.
Well, the Y I'm talking about was a YHA as well. On the west side.
No, I didn't go to the one on 96th Street.
Okay.
I was all over the Upper West Side with public schools, PS 166, IS 44. Yeah.
And what high school?
I ended up going to McBurney for a little bit, and then we moved out to Jersey my sophomore year, and I went to a school 2 years there. Then my mom passed away, and my dad wasn't doing too great, so I went to live in Long Island for 1 year in Stony Brook and graduated from Ward Melville.
Okay. Well, I look forward to pursuing our talk. It will be ongoing. I'm hoping, and you'll come back. And if anybody's listening and enjoying our offerings, as it were, I would like you to do me a solid. And
my pleasure.
Not you necessarily, but if anybody's out there and is enjoying any of this, box up some new or gently used children's books and take them to the Head Start program wherever it is you live. These kids need to read. They need to develop an imagination. They need to get their noses out of the devices and the computers. And very importantly, they need to become school ready. They need a head start. And we're not getting much help from the government nowadays. There's never enough money. Now it's even worse. So do that. Get these kids reading and do your thing. And I'd be very appreciative. Mitchell, thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. Honest to God, it would be a pleasure talking sports to you, even if I wasn't promoting this book.
That's a very, very high compliment. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I've got a couple more baseball stories I'll save for another day.
And you can come on the Mets show and we'll talk Mets ball one of these days as well.
All right. Thanks for calling back, and I look forward to listening through the podcast.
It'll be on in the next few days. I'll send you a link.
Muchísimas gracias.
I'm having enough trouble with English. You don't throw in anything I got to learn. I mean, I'm uno, dos, tres. That's about as far as I could get.
In 15 years, I'm not too far past that.
Okay. Enjoy. Go ahead.
No. I was going to yap on about football, and I just had a kid at 62 as my first son, my first child at 62.
Oh wow!
And wow. I just bought him a New York Jets hoodie because I think he's gonna need to learn to suffer for 50 years also. So
it makes you tough.
Yeah, like the Johnny Cash song, "A Boy Named Sue." I just made him a Jets fan. Same thing.
Name him Sue, and then make him a Jet fan, and then you think you got troubles now. All right, be well, my friend. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Over and out.
Okay.
See you soon.
A pleasure. Thanks. Bye-bye.
I am back. You're comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, in Alameda, California. We're going to talk a bunch of life, a bunch of A's baseball in the first segment. I've got my buddy, Jerry Feitelberg. How are you?
Yeah, two guys from Alameda just hanging around and having a conversation.
How bad is that, huh? You know, I heard something from Michael Duca, speaking of Alameda yesterday.
Yes.
I was talking to Michael on the Giant Show, which should be coming up right after our interview. And he talks, speaking of Alameda, that on December 7th, 1942, was that Pearl Harbor or 43?
41.
41, all right. I kept it in the decade.
Close.
In 1941, on that Sunday morning, playing baseball at Washington Park were Charlie Silvera,
yeah,
Bobby Brown,
wow,
and the third Yankee teammate, future Yankee teammate. Oh my God, I'm blanking on it.
Are you thinking of Bill McDougall or
no,
Billy
McDougall came
Billy
later,
Martin?
but it wasn't Billy Martin. But playing in Alameda that day was wow.
No, he'd be too young.
Jerry Coleman, that's who it
Jerry
was.
Coleman, oh yeah.
Yeah, all three of them. And
all three from San Francisco.
All three from San Francisco. And Washington Park was amateur ball back in those days in Northern California was incredible. And Charlie Silvera related that story, where were you when Pearl Harbor came along type thing, to Michael Duca, and he told it to me yesterday, and you'll hear it shortly. So it was, that's pretty cool being an Alamedan. There's terrific baseball history here. You know of it more than most. You are part of it. You were the team. You had a pharmacy
in Alameda.
Yep.
And you were the team pharmacist for the A's back in the 90s. So you add to the rich tradition of baseball in Alameda that continues through the 70s, and today we had Willie Stargell come out of here. He went to Encinal High School. Rich Rollins, his brother, among a bevy of other.
Jimmy Rollins played at Encinal High School, as did Big Willie Stargell.
Right.
Chris Spire is from Alameda. I think he went to St. Joseph's, if I'm not mistaken. But he played with the Giants in 1971.
The year of the Fox.
Dick Bartell was from Alameda. Bill Rigney.
Damn good shortstop in his day.
Bill Rigney spent time in this city. So we have a baseball. Andy Carey is from Alameda, and long history of many, many ball players coming from Alameda. And, of course...
there's nothing but trivia going on in my head. So let me just say that Andy Carey grew up not with the name Carey. And that name just fell out of my head.
No, that's okay.
But,
there are a lot of Alamedans. I believe that Tim Russert's wife is from Alameda, and McNamara, who was Secretary of Defense in the Kennedy administration, his wife was from Alameda. So there are a lot of Alamedans that have political influence as well as...
Hey, how about Doolittle?
Jimmy Doolittle. And I had the great pleasure of meeting the general when I was down in Santa Monica in the 70s. And his wife used to pick up the prescriptions at my store when I was working down there. I was at 7th and Montana in Santa Monica. And one day she brought the general in, and I got to meet him. And he wasn't very tall, but I got to meet him. He was in his 80s at the time. And his wife was a delightful lady. He later moved up to the Monterey Peninsula before he passed away. But I was just thrilled to meet him for what he did for this country. Doolittle's Raiders. Yeah. Who could ever forget that?
I can imagine. Real hero. And it's been a rough week for heroes. The wrong celebrity died first. How about that?
Well, if you get a chance, and it's on the Internet, Joe Biden did a eulogy for John McCain today. They were good friends in the Senate. Biden was a Democrat. McCain was a Republican, but they were friends.
Yeah, back in the days when you could cross the aisle and not vomit.
Absolutely, and it was wonderful to hear the eulogy. By the way, I heard Biden speak last year at the Speaker Series down at De Anza College, and he was just wonderful. He spoke for 45 minutes without a note. Unbelievable.
I would think if the spirit moves him that he would make the best candidate for president next time.
His age is against him. He's in his mid-70s right now. So
that doesn't necessarily mean that that's against you, depending on your health and what have you.
Right.
But the rigors of the long campaign seems to have taken its toll on Bernie a little bit. Seeing him lately, he doesn't look quite as vigorous.
He's a little older. He's, 76 or 77 now. So age creeps up.
Yeah, if he gets to 78, sell.
Yeah, right.
Best you can.
Sure.
That's the best you can do.
Yeah. What's interesting, the Speaker Series down at De Anza is really wonderful. They're going to have, in March, they're going to have James Comey speak to the group, and that should be interesting. We should see watch it happen between now and March.
Oh, absolutely. If he doesn't mysteriously fall off the face of the earth.
Right.
In the meantime, what can go on that's more surreal than what's going on?
I don't know. Maybe aliens landing close encounters of the third world, I suppose.
Well, maybe aliens have landed. That's
the president did not have a good week last week. And,
no, but you know what? It hasn't hurt him in his popularity with the evangelistic cuckoos.
I mean, 71% of them would vote for him. He's been accused by molesting 17 women. He's had affairs with a porn star and a and paid hush money to a Playboy model and a porn star, and he's getting away with it, and they still approve of him.
Well, none of that stuff should matter, except when the campaign comes into it. If he's paying hush money to cover up what he's doing before an election, yeah, that's a crime. But the rest of it, let a man frolic. What the hell? With Clinton.
Right wing went crazy when a certain Democratic president in the 90s had his dalliances revealed.
Yeah, I just said with Clinton that was over a simple little cigar and the placement thereof. Everybody's a stickler for something. You know what I mean? And does it hurt to ask a woman if she'd like a Tipperillo? No. So why should a big thing be made? Anyway, let's segue to something that's a little less amusing to me, but not necessarily an enjoyable topic for you. I think the loss of Sean Manaea by the A's is pretty much going to put a damper on any hopes of the playoffs this year.
Yeah, that's a real disaster for this club. Not only at first they thought it was a shoulder impingement, but then they found out that there's problems with the labrum inside the shoulder. I don't think he's going to pitch again for the rest of the year. He may require surgery if there's a tear in there, and that will be a long recovery. So don't count on Manaea coming back. Also,
and that's something that you can't go out and find a number one. You could plug in a bunch of guys like Jackson and Cahill and Anderson over the year. Anderson was another guy that's going down as expectedly so, as a matter of fact. I can't believe Bean would think that he could get full years out of Cahill and Anderson. But remember, he was paddling water out of the boat, a sinking boat, when 4 of the 5 starters went down earlier in the season. Graveman and those guys, and
Graveman, Cotton, and A.J. Puck, and one other guy. Plus, Paul Blackburn's on the DL right now. Triggs is on the DL. That's 6 pitchers. They've gone through 11 pitchers, and Anderson was on the DL earlier this year, and he has a forearm strain in his left arm, and that is usually indicative of a UCL, ulnar collateral ligament, and that means TJ surgery to correct it if rest doesn't do it. So they could have a 5th pitcher going down with Tommy John surgery. And if you look at the rosters around baseball, down in Houston, McCullers is on the DL. Charlie Morton just went on the DL. Up in Boston.
Oh, I didn't know that. He's my guy in my fantasy league. No wonder he's been stinking lately.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So this is the time of the year where pitchers lose velocity, and when they lose velocity, the managers and pitching coaches start to worry: how are we going to replace these guys? What are we going to do?
You're not going to replace Manaea. I think it's curtains. But let me tell you, assuming that they're not going to make a run at it. I didn't think after they made the run they did, I thought that was going to exhaust them, and I thought a deep Houston team would win out. But now with Minaya down, it's taps. Here's what I suggest. Talking to you now, it's the 30th of August. We're going to put this on tomorrow morning, which will be the 31st. Last day of the second trading deadline. I would say get rid of Lowry. I'd say.
Well, I don't think they're going to get rid of Jed, but they could make a deal. There's been some speculation about going up after Jake Odorizzi from the Twins. I think he's going to be a free agent at the end of next year, and they could pick him up and get 1 year out of him, and they could make a deal for the proverbial player to be named later. So they could do that to pick up a starter. Right now,
I think they should sell at this point. I don't think they should be picking up. I think they should be getting what they can.
Make the
for a guy like Lowry, you can make a difference in a pennant race to somebody, anybody.
You don't think the A's will make the playoffs? I think the A's will make the playoffs. I think they'll have enough. If guys like Frankie Montas and Mengden can give them 5 innings with their bullpen, with Trevino, Fernando Rodney, jurors from the Blake Trinan, they've got guys for 6, 7, 8, 9. They need 5.
No, they're going to burn out that bullpen. Let's name the 5 starters that they have now.
They got Mengden.
All right, he's just coming back. Am I correct?
Mengden, Montas, Cahill, Edwin Jackson, and Mike Fiers.
That Fiers, I forgot about him. He's pretty solid. Hats off again to Billy Beane. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but to have them competitive at the end of August, there's a lot to be said for that.
They've won 80 games. One more win, and they'll guarantee themselves a winning season. And there's 32 games left. I think they could win a 93.
Well, 2 more games, and they'll guarantee themselves a winning season. Yeah. But I'm always a stickler for that. Having a winning season.
You saw how well they play.
As a Met fan, I don't get to experience much, so I know how those numbers work. 1 game over 500 will do her.
So, well, anyway, they were on the road for 7 games. They won 4 and lost 3, and they took 3 out of 4 in Minnesota, and they lost 2 out of 3 in Houston. The first Houston game looked like they were going to sprint away. They got a 4-0 lead, and then Houston scored 11 unanswered runs. But the last 2 games were like playoff games, and they split them. The A's won 1-4-3, and then they lost 1-5-4. And
they lost the getaway game, and it was a walk-off win by Houston.
It was
on the heels of learning that Minaya is gone for the year.
Right.
I really think that makes them non-contenders, and they'd be better off getting a lot for Lucroy and Lowry at this point in their careers.
I believe they're going to make it, Ralph. I think that they've got enough juice in the tank to make it. And with the 3 good starters, Cahill, Fiers, and Jackson, if they can hang in there, they'll. As long as Cahill doesn't have to start on the road, he'll be okay. If the playoff game were here and he was asked to start here, he'd be lights out. But if he has to start in New York, he won't make it. But Fiers can do it.
At their best, these are good, solid number 3 starters. Am I correct?
Exactly. They're not aces, and that's what's amazing about the A's, because they've had so many injuries to the pitching staff, and they've got the 4th best record in the American League. It's amazing.
I know, but it's the next games that I'm concerned about. I give them all the credit when they were reasonably healthy, and they never were reasonably healthy. I give them 1,000,000,000% credit for, again, having lost 4 out of 5 of their starters. And now 5 out of 5 of the original starting pitchers have gone down. Mangden's back. I like him.
And he pitched four shutout innings against a very good Houston team 3 games ago. I think it was Monday night. So he proved himself. You know, if you look at that Houston lineup, they are loaded. Their first 4 hitters, Springer, Bregman, Altuve, and Correa, they're all all-stars. All of them. They are phenomenal players. And then they got guys like Tyler White, who's a rookie, and he's lighting up the league. You got Yuli Gurriel. You've got Marwin Gonzalez, Josh Reddick, Evan Gaddis, Max Stassi, Brian McCann when he comes back.
You're making my argument. I'm not. It isn't an anti-A's thing. It's more of a deep Houston team that I don't think you're going to overcome them. And then now we're talking about the wild card, and you got teams. Could be the Red Sox.
Could be the Red Sox or the Yankees, and they're loaded.
Right, and either the Red Sox or the Yankees.
My goodness, and Didi Gregorius, I think he's on the DL, but he'll be off shortly. And they are stacked with Sanchez, and when they get Judge back, and Stanton, and Gardner, and Hicks, my God, they are loaded.
They are loaded.
And so are the Red Sox. Unbelievably how good these teams are.
Indeed. That is precisely why I don't think the A's are going to make the playoffs.
No, they'll make it, but they're going to...
The executive of the year has to be Billy Beane at this point.
Well, David Forrest is the general manager. Beane is the... whatever he is. But what we
he's like Sabian.
Let's focus on
they're general managers emeritus. I guarantee you Billy Beane is...
They're involved, no question.
You're right.
The
Both
trades have to be done by them.
In San Francisco and Billy Beane are heavy-duty involved. But whoever it is that's running them,
let's
give them a lot of credit. And I give their scouting a lot of credit. What can I tell you? Rumors are getting Sonny Gray back.
Yeah, the Yankees are disenchanted with Sonny. He has had a terrible year.
Says he understates it. Yes, terrible year, and he's got a how do you say it? A $20 tower on a $1 million airport. They used to say.
Yeah, unbelievable. They wanted him.
So his brain, she's in the worker, that good. Given his idiotic statements along the way, but
let's take a look at the A's schedule coming up. They got 4 games with Seattle. Seattle's 5.5 games behind the A's at this point in time, and if the A's, all they have to do is split the 4-game series to remain 5.5 games ahead of them. And then they have, the only team they really have problems with would be the Yankees. They have 3 with the Yankees, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. They have an off day and 3 more with Texas at home. Texas has no pitching, but they can hit. Then the A's go on the road for 3 in Baltimore and 3 in Tampa Bay. Baltimore is having one of the worst seasons they've ever had in their history. And Tampa Bay is a surprise team. They're playing over 500 baseball, and they traded away all their players. But they got a lot of good young players, and that could be some difficulty. Then they come home to play the Angels for 3 and Minnesota for 3, then go on the road for Seattle and L.A. again. So they don't have the only real team that's ahead of them in with a winning record at that point, or not a winning record because Seattle has a winning record, but the Yankees are ahead of them. So Texas has a losing record, Baltimore has a losing record, Tampa's about 500, the Angels are scuffling around 500, and Minnesota's having a poor year. So there's no reason why not to think that the A's won't make the playoffs. They should be able to handle that. even with their starting rotation being beat up. So I think if Manaea and Montas are ready, and there's every indication that they've been able to pitch at the major league level, they should be able to make the playoffs. But the question is, who would start the one-game playoff in New York? And that would be, or Boston, however that works out. And that, to my mind, would be Mike Fiers would be the guy.
What do you think the odds are of all five of those starting pitchers that we're talking about to go down the stretch, staying off the DL between now and the rest of the season? What do you think the odds of that are?
That would be wonderful. The odds, 50-50.
Oh, my. I'm not a wagering man.
Mengden's been on
I'm a wagering spam, as a matter of fact. No,
I don't think Fiers or Montas has been on the DL. Cahill has been on the DL.
Cahill is the DL.
Yeah.
So is Anderson. They are the poster boys for the DL, not just this year, over the course of a promising 7-8 year careers. I just hope they're not paying either of them anything long term.
No, they don't have big contracts either. I think they signed for 1.3, 1.5 million each. They're not paying them a lot of money. So, but the A's are going to have to come to the realization that if they want to be contenders, and they have a solid nucleus of young players on the field, if they want to be contenders, they got to get pitching. They built the bullpen, but the starting rotation has been an emergency room ward all season long, and I don't know how to.
Well, maybe they can. Maybe there's a team out there. If you could package Lowry and Lucroy, you could get some good young pitchers. I mean, not major league pitchers, but A-ball, AA pitchers, and go into next year. You can't go into next year with mediocrity. As you say, some of these guys, Manaea being one, aren't going to necessarily be healthy at the beginning of next year just because they're missing the end of this year. And that's my advice. Our opinions differ, and that's good. We'll see.
Yeah, that's good. That's what makes for the program. Now, keep in mind that if they're going to trade Lowry and or Lucroy, both of them are going to be free agents at the end of the year. So whoever's going to get them,
they're not going to get much.
For 1 month.
You're going to get a rental. Exactly.
They're going to get a rental for 1 month. I wouldn't. If I'm a general manager, I'm not too eager to give up prospects for a 1 month rental.
Well, it depends how close you are to the World Series, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, in the American League, the Indians are going to be in the playoffs. The Astros are going to be in the playoffs. The Red Sox and Yankees are going to be in the playoffs. So who would be? And Seattle doesn't need a second baseman. They get Cano.
The Red Sox don't have an everyday catcher. They're very weak behind the plate. Lucroy could help them. I don't know. I know that Pedroia's had a hard time coming back. I don't know how they are at second base, but they've had Lowry. Everybody loves Lowry. He's a hitting machine. Yeah. And I'm just thinking the Red Sox probably have something tucked away in high A ball that people are going, wow. They might. And remember how you predicted that they get Lowry? I predict they're going to not have Lowry. They're going to do something. But it's only 1 or 2 days, and we'll find out. It's not like we have to wait.
The trading deadline tomorrow.
Right.
And the players have to clear waivers first.
Oh, that's no problem. If at this point everybody is in agreement with everybody.
So we'll see. We'll see if there are any moves being made. I think the A's would like to get a pitcher, but I don't know who they get. Odorizzi was mentioned. I've never been big on Jake Odorizzi, but I'm not making.
You mentioned something about Gio, the possibility of Gio
Gonzalez. Yeah,
they were.
The Washington Senators, the Nationals, have soured on Gio, and Gio had a promising career here in 2011, and of course, what did Bean do? He sent him to Washington, and he's had a pretty good career with Washington. And I don't know if he's lost any velocity. I don't know if the scouts have checked him out, but he would be a great addition, and there would be a lefty, and the A's need a lefty in their starting rotation. Manaea and Anderson were the two lefties, and they're both gone now. They have all righties.
I just don't think that they're strong enough in the field to compensate for all that pitching loss. They're a good young hitting team, but they're not a team that can score 7 or 8 runs a game on a regular basis. And,
they do better on the road than they do here. The ball carries better on the road. They have many more home runs on the road than they do here. But I think that they have whatever they have, 16 games on the road or 16 left at home. So they'll be
all that road stuff. All those numbers are small numbers, so you can't really get an idea, and they change drastically from year to year. Remember, the ball carries poorly for their opponents as well.
Yep.
So that you have to factor both things in, especially in short series. Mm-hmm. Road home splits they change drastically from year to year. That said, go ahead.
Yeah. But, as you know, baseball is built on pitching. And fortunately for the A's, they got a pretty good bullpen if they don't burn it out before the end of the season. But the way I see it, I see them making the playoffs as a second wild card. I see them going to either New York and Boston. Anything can happen. But even if they do win the wild card game, they'll probably go out. They either have to play the winner that has the best record would either be Boston or Houston at that point in time for the in the first round of the playoffs. And if they play Houston, I think Houston's too good for them.
All right. Hey, we got an interesting pennant race, and that's all one can hope for. Just remember, you could be a Met fan. How would you feel then?
But the Mets went to the World Series 3 years ago, and everyone was hoping that they would rebound, but they've just fallen apart, as has the Kansas City Royals, who they played.
Yeah, that hasn't escaped my mind. But I'm in a good mood, so let's keep it that way, and we won't talk about the Mets. But we will agree to come back next week and do this again, Jerry.
Well, that would be very nice. I look forward to it.
All right.
As usual.
In the meantime, my best to your lady, and you have a wonderful week and stay healthy.
Yeah, I just want to remind fans that Monday, September 3rd, is ALS Awareness Day at the Oakland Coliseum. And the Oakland A's are donating $150,000 for ALS research. You have to remember that Stephen Piscotty's mother, Gretchen, died of this horrible disease earlier in the season. And Jim Catfish Hunter, who is number has been retired by the A's, was also a victim of ALS, and he died at the age of 53. So I think in $5 of the special, they have a special ticket sale. $5 from each ticket is being donated to ALS research. And if you have nothing to do on Monday, come on out and see two good teams go at it, the Yankees and the A's, and it should be a lot of fun. So I hope to see everyone at the ballpark this Monday.
Whoa. That is a great invitation to all A's fans to come out and support your team. I don't know how attendance has been throughout this pennant race. But maybe you can tell us, do you see signs of A's fans rallying around, giving people reason to build a ballpark?
Yeah, Not only do you have to build a ballpark. I'll give you an example of a ballpark that was built. You go to Miami, Florida, and the ballpark that was built for the Miami Marlins, probably the first year that they drew very well. But the Miami ownership changed. They sold off all their good players, and now the Miami Marlins, in a ballpark that's not more than 5 or 6 years old, are drawing less than 10,000 fans per game. They're like,
oh, look at Baltimore, the same thing. You got to win. It's important that you do that, but you could go round and round. Which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do the fans have to come in, bring in a little cash so that the team could put it into the ball club and development and international scouting and all that goes with it? They got to have a floating cash flow. And
if you look,
historically,
the only team that I can recall in recent memory that's been packing the park ever since it's opened has been the San Francisco Giants. The park opened up in the year 2000, and they sold out. And, of course, they had Barry Bonds, and in 2001 he hit 73 home runs, so people were flocking to the park. And even though he was chasing, they won the pennant in 2002, National League pennant, and even though he was chasing the all-time home run record, and he broke that in 2007, attendance started to drop because the team was not competitive, and it didn't get that way. And then, of course, they won the three World Series in 10, 12, and 14, and they packed the park again. But even this great ballpark in downtown San Francisco, if they don't have a winning team, their attendance is going to drop off too. So you have to win to get people.
Well, I remember them being sold out before their little mini dynasty, through it, and for the most part after it. They haven't had any problems drawing fans. One of the reasons is that they've drawn from a corporate fan base. Yep. Silicon Valley.
Yep.
And there are advantages and disadvantages to that. If you fill your stadium with a bunch of corporate folks that don't really care about the game, they're not there with their kids, and their kids are the future fans.
Yep.
So in so many ways, they're shooting themselves in the foot. At first, they put night games in so that the working man can watch the game at night, which is a terrific idea. But they forget the long term. The long term is, as Casey Stengel would say, the youth of America. And maybe that was Joe Pesci. But
that was from my cousin Vinny. What's a youth? What's a youth?
Hey, he's a youth. Joe Pesci.
But if you go back in history, go back 30 years when the A's had those 3 pennant-winning years, 88, 89, 90, they averaged at least 30,000 a game for the whole season. They drew 2.4, 2.5, 2.6 million, something like that. They
can be done, but let me tell you something. That was before they closed center field with the Davis monstrosity.
That's
and
true.
It really does take away from the ambiances. That was a good ballpark. You could have kept that for. It wasn't everything it could have been, but it had a beautiful view of the North Berkeley Hills, and
had they known that Mark Davis was going to move the club 23 or 24 years after coming back, they never would have built Mount Davis. They would have left the ballpark the way it was, and it would have been more fan-friendly. The bleachers out there in the days, back in those days, the fans could talk to Dave Henderson and Ricky Henderson and Canseco, but today they're too high, they're further away, and the ballpark does not have the intimacy because it's so much foul territory. And baseball is an intimate game. And
don't knock being too high unless your seat is in a bad location.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. But if you look at the parks that they've built, they're all like Camden Yards. They're all seats are closer to the field, just like in Fenway Park, the new Yankee Stadium. You have a much more intimate ballpark, and fans like that. They don't like to be sitting so far away. So
you're absolutely correct. They do need another stadium. Have you heard anything before we close about the stadium, which location has been picked? Are they
I heard they hired a Danish
with
architect.
the powers that be in the city/county? And is there a possibility that at the last moment they could say, Las Vegas made us a deal that we couldn't refuse? Remember how quickly they put the shovel in the ground to get the Oakland Raiders? And could they come out of nowhere to do that?
It wouldn't surprise me.
Is that a possibility?
They would have to have a dome stadium. But in Oakland, what we're hearing is that management is favoring the Howard Terminal location for whatever reason.
Really?
Yeah. Well, first of all, they don't have to deal with the city and the county. And here you have the Coliseum, 50% owned by the city and 50% owned by the county, and the city doesn't have the money to buy out the county. The A's have an offer on the table to buy out the county, and they could do that and then maybe get something done. Dealing with politicians.
I've always said if you could build a gem on the waterfront that's across from AT&T Park or Pac Bell or whatever you want to call it, that in itself, win, lose, or draw, for a long time would be filled up. You get a 35,000, 40,000, a nice little intimate stadium, and you'd really have something. The problem is getting folks in and out of there. Creative people can work up a way to bust them in, this, that, and the other thing. You have a shuttle bus thing coming off a BART. Whatever it takes, it can be done. And it would revitalize the neighborhood around the park, just as the park in San Francisco revitalized the south of Market area.
Did it ever? Wow.
Yeah, right? Did you remember how it used to be? What an industrial horror it was?
It was just run-down land over there in San Francisco.
Right.
Yeah, in fact, I remember they had an old blacksmith building in that neighborhood. That's how years ago it went. And it made a whole difference. And, of course, the thing that, in looking back now, when the earthquake did away with the Embarcadero Freeway, that really helped the ballpark, too, because it's such a nice walk from the Embarcadero BART station. You can walk all the way up to the ballpark. It's about a mile. They have restaurants along the way, and you can stop and just enjoy San Francisco and the waterfront all the way up to the
Absolutely.
ballpark.
And if you're out there and if you're in the Bay Area, go and enjoy the new transit terminal downtown on Mission Street. I took the bus the other day, Tally and I did, from Alameda, and our destination was this beautiful terminal with a garden up on top with food and music and a community being built, greenery in the downtown area of San Francisco, and it is very special. So
that's wonderful to hear that.
Yeah,
they spent a lot of time redoing the Transbay Terminal. and it's great. And of course, isn't the Salesforce Tower right next door?
Yes, it is, and I think they named the terminal after that. It's like naming rights, and it's right next door. You're right downtown. They have buses. You come in on a bus from wherever you are, the outlying area, Oakland, Berkeley, Alameda, whatever, and you transfer to downtown buses right there. And you go anywhere in the city that you want. It's terrific. It's new and it's light and it doesn't smell from urine yet. It was the first week, but I thought that was a big plus.
It is a plus. It's a plus.
If you've ever been to the old terminal, you go in there. It was like a New York City subway.
Yeah, I went by it many times, but I was never in it.
Well, you're lucky. I guess it depends on what you were driving and where you were going. Jerry, fun talking to you as usual.
Yeah, it was good. Good conversation today. I enjoyed it immensely. And,
all right, my friend. Stay healthy.
Hopefully my prediction about the A's will be true, that they will make the playoffs, and we'll see what happens.
All right. You're going to be, if you stick around listening, we're going to have the Giants next. We're going to be talking to Michael Duca. And after that, the Dodgers show, where Peter Trunk, Fred Walin, and Ronnie Rabinovitz talk Dodgers, A Tale of Two Cities, from Brooklyn to Los Angeles.
So we
got it all covered here on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. It's, as you're hearing this, it's Wednesday morning, the day of the trade deadline, the second trade deadline. We'll see who's right. We'll see if the A's will be buyers or sellers.
Okay.
Thanks
Check it out
very much, Jerry.
Okay, Ralph. Take care.
Be well, my friend.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Hang in there for the next segment.
Okay, take care.
Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. This is Comfortably Zoned Radio, and it's time for Dodgers baseball, a tale of two cities, from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. My name is Peter Trunk, and with me, as always, is Ron Rabinovitz and Fred Walin. Ron, how you doing, buddy?
Good, Peter. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks. Doing fine. A little bit older today, but feeling good. Freddie, how are you?
I'm watching baseball in the background, the MLB.
All right.
So
that's always good. That's always good to do.
Fun to watch.
By the way, are you cognizant of the fact that the Dodgers claimed Ryan Madsen today off of waivers?
Well, here's the deal. They need a reliever, but more importantly than that, their ace reliever with a heart ailment, Kenley Jansen, has indicated he's stopping his heart medicine.
I saw that.
I saw that too. That's terrible.
The Dodgers should immediately put him on the DL. He's set for an operation in October. He had a heart operation in 212 or 213.
Yes.
The point is, an athlete, and I played all sports, I'm sure you guys did too growing up.
Sure.
We'd never say we were hurt. We'd always try to play. This guy is stopping his pills, his medicine, to keep his heart moving. That's on the Dodgers. The Dodgers have to say, your season's over. Just get ready for your operation. Agree or disagree, guys? Please help me out.
100% agree.
I 100% too. I agree.
Yeah.
100%.
Come on, man. It's a man's life.
Yeah.
Not a baseball
game.
So
what are they going to do? Are they going to enforce it?
Oh, they can put him on the DL. That's simple as that. And then he'll go back to his pills because he says he's like sleepwalking on the mound. And so look, I take Xanax. I take 3 a day.
Yeah.
If I want to cut back, first of all, I call the doctor. But secondly, he'll tell me, and I know this because I have in the past, okay, you go 3, and then for a couple of weeks go 2, and then go 1. Meaning,
you phase it down. You don't just stop cold turkey.
And apparently, Kenley Jansen had just stopped at cold turkey. And again, as Peter just said, it's a human life versus the playoffs. I'm choosing the human life. And the Dodgers should be, if something happens, it's on the Dodgers, is all I can tell you.
No doubt about it. There's
I don't think it's
no doubt about that.
They should put him on a DL and be done.
Yep.
Because he's not good what he's doing right now.
Yeah, well, you know what? He's not effective because, like Fred just said, he explained to the reporters after the game that he had been walking around in a haze. He was almost numb from the medication, and he couldn't get his normal psyching up and all that stuff, which is probably good, probably saved his life. But now he's going to just quit the pills and quit the medication and try to get the Dodgers into the playoffs in the World Series. That's madness. That's utter
madness.
That's madness.
He's got a family. He's got children.
This is
it's
game,
crazy.
For God's sakes. Yeah.
He's a young man.
Yeah. He's a baby. Yeah.
Terrible.
All right. Well, let's get to what we're going to cover in the show tonight. We're going to, as I normally do every week, I say, as part of my introduction, it's time for Dodgers baseball. Well, tonight, oddly enough, it's time for, just for this show anyway, it's time for Dodgers football. And by that I mean, if you're not cognizant of the fact, and some fans listening to the show may be, and maybe they're not, there used to be a football team in the NFL called the Brooklyn Dodgers. Yes, as Casey would say, you can look it up if you don't believe that. But anyway, it all started about 1930, and I'm going to let Ronnie Rabinovitz clue us in on this. Ronnie, if you would.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because they played their home games at Ebbets Field, just like the Dodgers did. And they were in business from 1930 to 1943. And then in 1944 as the Brooklyn Tigers. In 1945, because of financial difficulties, and there was not enough players because of the wartime, World War II, the team merged with the Boston Yanks, and after that were known as the Yanks for that season. It's quite an amazing story. A lot of people don't know it. It really is something. Their record wasn't terrific. In 1930, they were 7-4-1. In 31, they were 2-12. In 33, they were 32. They were 3-9. 33, they were 5-2-1. 34, they were 4-7. 35, 5-6-1. And it went on like that. 36 were 3-8-1. 37, 3-7-1. 38, 4-4-3. 39, 4-6-1. Now 40, they had a pretty good season. 8-3-0. And in 41, 7-4-0. In 42, they went back down again, 3-8-0. 43, 2-8-0. And in 44, when they were the Brooklyn Tigers, they were 0-10-0. So their whole record in all those years was 60 wins, 100 losses, and 9 ties. So, pretty amazing. Yeah. 1946, co-owner and partner Dan Topping, who was also involved with the Yankees, pulled the Tiger team, the old NFL, and placed the new established rival professional league, the All-American Football Conference, which certainly lasted until only 1949. So it's a pretty amazing story. The team, as I say, began in 1930. Two Brooklyn businessmen bought the Dayton Triangles for $2,500 and moved the franchise to Ebbets These two individuals were Bill Dwyer, a past owner of the New York Americans and Pittsburgh Pirates of the National Hockey League, and Jack Depler, a player coach for the NFL's Orange Tornadoes. Dwyer and Depler then renamed the Triangles the Brooklyn Dodgers, borrowing from the name of the Brooklyn's Major League Baseball team. So that's how it all started. It never was a real huge success. By the way,
one of those original owners of the Dodger football team, Bill Dwyer, was a notorious gambler and a bootlegger. Depler, his partner, was an active player.
Right. Player coach.
Quite a combination, those two guys.
Yeah.
Here's something that I found astounding to me because of the final thing I'm going to say about it. Like you said, the Dodgers, the football Dodgers, lasted from 1930 to 1944 when they became the Brooklyn Tigers, and then they left the NFL and went to the AAFC, the All-American Football Conference. But there was another iteration of a Brooklyn Dodger football team, and that was, believe it or not, the Continental Football League in 1966. Yes, you're hearing me correctly, 1966. They were not related at all to the former NFL or AAFC clubs, but they had that name, Brooklyn Dodgers. And since it was 1966, they couldn't play at Ebbets Field because Ebbets Field had been torn down in 1960. But listen to this. This is funny.
Yeah.
They attempted to play their schedule in 1960, their home schedule in 1966 at Shea Stadium. But the Jets and the Mets wouldn't let them play there. So they took it to court, et cetera, and the season was going to start. So they had to find a place to play, a venue, and they found Downing Stadium on Randall's Island, okay? It's an old soccer stadium. But here's the ironic part. Here's the thing that killed me. They did wind up playing their home games at Downing Stadium, and Downing Stadium was lighted by the lights from Ebbets Field. When Ebbets Field was torn down, the light stanchions were brought over to Downing Stadium in Randall's Island. So the Brooklyn Dodger football team of 1966, the Continental Minor League football team, actually played under Ebbets Field lights, original lights.
Unbelievable.
I thought that was when I read that, I said, wait till I tell that to Ronnie unless he stumbled upon it. That to me, I know. That's so ironic. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
It was weird.
And you know what else was funny? This owner, Bill Dwyer, the only Bill Dwyer I know, he used to be the sports editor at the LA Times. He's a very, very dear friend of mine. He went to high school with me. Yeah, Billy Dwyer. Yeah, you probably know him, don't you? You know him, Fred?
Oh, yeah, I know him well. I met him.
Yeah.
Never hired him.
Great guy.
He offered me a job in Bakersfield to write like Bakersfield sports. And when I was in my 20s, and I should have, or whenever he came here, I would have been in my 30s. I should have taken it, but I never did because I like staying in Los Angeles. But he was always very, very nice and
wonderful guy.
And after
we went to high school together.
After he stepped down
in Sheboygan.
After he stepped down as editor, he wrote for many, many years for the
Yes,
Times
he did.
as a freelancer, or he worked for him. But after he stepped down as editor, so great writer, and he's
terrific guy. Terrific guy.
Jim Healy, the famous Los Angeles sportscaster of the 50s, 60s, and 70s on KLAC and KMPC here, used to have a lot of fun with Bill Dwyer. He liked him, but he really had a lot of fun with him.
That's great.
Same
Billy
name,
was
different
a good
guy.
player.
Yeah.
Yes, same name, different guy. Yeah.
Uh-huh. In their first season, the Brooklyn Dodger football team in 1930, like you reported, Ronnie, they weren't that successful, but their first game ever at Ebbets Field, they blanked the Newark Tornadoes 32-0 at Ebbets Field. That was their first football game, the Brooklyn Dodgers' first football game ever at Ebbets Field. They actually won 32-0. And later on that season, the highlight of that season, the season wasn't that bad. They were 7-4-1. They finished in fourth place. But the season's highlight had to be their 7-6 win against the New York Giants at the Polo Grounds.
The New York Football Giants, huh?
The New York Football Giants at the Polo Grounds on November 30th, 1930. And by the way, you glossed over it kind of fast. One of their later owners, the Brooklyn Dodger football team, was Dan Topping, who was the president of the New York Yankees baseball team.
Right, exactly.
That Dan Topping, Del Webb. You've all heard of Dan Topping and Del Webb, who ran the Yankees for years and years and years. That's the same Dan Topping, unlike William Dwyer, who had the same name but was a different guy than the guy we were talking about 2 minutes ago. Right. This guy, Dan Topping, was the original Dan Topping. And I thought that was a lot of interesting stuff there. As we move out from Brooklyn out to the West Coast, we're going to stay in an era or a genre that Fred Walin and I covered like a blanket on a previous show, and that is like the 1988 to 1998 Los Angeles Dodgers under the I'm not going to say auspices of, but Fred Clare was the Dodger GM for those years. He took over for Al Campanis. We talked about Al Campanis' problem on Nightline, and the Dodgers had to pull the plug on Campanis, and O'Malley, Peter, asked Fred Clare to take over for Campanis as the general manager, and he searched around for another general manager. He tried to get Al Harrison away from the New York Mets front office, but was refused an interview. So Clare actually kept the job, and he kept it for quite a while. He was only let go after the Piazza trade, which he did not initiate. It was initiated by Fox after Peter O'Malley sold the team to Fox. But anyway, I digress a bit. There was a time right before Peter O'Malley sold the Dodgers that he was negotiating and planning, and 24 hours a day, night and day in and day out for quite a while, Peter O'Malley was totally consumed with the idea of not only bringing professional football back to Los Angeles, but building their stadium adjacent to Chavez Ravine, adjacent to Dodger Stadium. Fred Walin, what can you tell us about this?
Well, apparently Peter spent millions in architectural reports. That's how much he wanted to do it. And remember now, after the 94 season, both the Rams and the Raiders had left Los Angeles. And 15 years earlier, I think, Georgia Frontiere Rosenblum moved the Rams out of the Coliseum to Angel Stadium in Anaheim. Okay, so a lot of us lost interest in the Rams at that point. The Raiders, of course, playing in the Coliseum when they moved to Los Angeles. But after 94, we lost both clubs. Okay, so Peter wants to build a football-only stadium next to Dodger Stadium, 100% financed by individuals, so no public funds. Although when we discover, I mean, when you find out when that it's never without public funds. I found out that AT&T in Dallas, Jerry Jones, 45% of it was built by public funds. But anyways, Peter up front said, we'll find the money for it. And it looked, I thought, that he was going to get an expansion team. And then I think the mayor was Bill Reardon. I'm not sure. But I know the mayor at some point intervened and said, if we're going to have a club here, it's going to be at the Coliseum. And, folks, the Coliseum is a wretched old building. But anyway, even then it was. And 24 years later, it definitely is. And anyways, I think it was Reardon who was the mayor. I'm not 100% positive. But anyway, the mayor said, And so then, with the NFL and the whole thing, you've got different parties saying, it took away, I think, the strength of Peter O'Malley when the mayor said that, with the NFL and, with most people thinking about it, because the mayor, has some power. And I think that was the end of it at that point, because the mayor said, we're not building one next to Dodger Stadium. If we do it, it's going to be at the Coliseum.
I've read that a person years after this happened, way after 1998, after Peter sold the team, someone said, and I'm trying to remember if it was Buzzy Bavasi, but Buzzy Bavasi had moved on. Buzzy Bavasi was now president of the Anaheim Angels or California Angels, but I'm not sure if it was Bavasi or someone else, but someone who had much more knowledge about the subject than I would have had or do have today said that was the tipping point. That was the touchstone. That was the final straw. And that's why Peter O'Malley sold the Los Angeles Dodgers. Any truth to that, Fred? Do you know anything about that?
Well, Pete, I don't know how many kids Peter has, but I think a bundle. And I took it as a word that it was a tax thing. Under tax laws, if he passed away and a tremendous percentage of the money does not go to his family, and that's what the thing that Trump just passed to make it go to your family when Trump was saying it was for the bottom. No, it was for people like Trump. Trump saved if Trump has $5 billion, as he says, which I don't believe, but that law that passed last December saved him $1 billion, saved his family after he passes $1 billion. But at that point, that wasn't the case because we didn't have a crook in the White House. So Peter would have had to spend a tremendous amount of, when he passed, his family would have lost quite a few $1 million. So I always trusted it. But of course, I think your point well taken that maybe he was emotionally beaten up. He wanted to stay in the business. And maybe if he had the football and the baseball, maybe he would have kept it. I don't know. But he did sell it in '98. And then he sold it, and then the Fox situation came, and the rest, folks, is history, and it's never been the same.
Right.
I know I read what I just reported to you, that football was the final straw that had Peter O'Malley to sell the team. Then I read that in one spot, but the following that I'm about to say, I've read in numerous spots, at least 4 different places I've read this, that almost immediately Peter O'Malley regretted selling the Dodgers and wanted to actually buy them back or negate the sale or whatever. And then his son-in-law, I may have this part wrong, his son-in-law bought into the San Diego Padres or whatever. But anyway, the main thrust of my thought here is that O'Malley, Peter that is, almost immediately regretted his decision. Have you read that, Fred, or do you know anything about that?
I know as late as, I'm guessing now, 210 or 211, when the Guggenheims bought him, he was in the hunt. He wanted to rebuy them.
Oh, yeah, right. I remember reading that.
That's right.
Whenever they were sold, he was maybe the highest bidder, but they gave it to Guggenheim's, or he was the second highest bidder. So, yeah, he wanted to get back into it in 210 or 211 whenever the sale was finished, consummated. But your point well taken. Tom Seidler, his nephew, owns, I think, 45% of the Padres.
Oh, his nephew. How old is Peter O'Malley, Fred?
I think he's probably even older than you. And that's hard to believe. Your birthday was yesterday. I'm kidding, but I'm not. I'm guessing Peter is 81 or 82.
That's way older than me. I'm only 39.
Don't believe it.
You're a youngster. You're a youngster.
We're all in our 90s. Don't worry about it.
Yes, now that you mention that, crazy, man. I should have remembered that. Now that you mention it, I do remember that when Guggenheim was jockeying for ownership, that Peter O'Malley's name did surface in a bunch of reports.
He was in the hunt.
Yeah, he was in the hunt, right, that he wanted back in. And I said to myself, at the time, I said, I don't know Peter O'Malley. Fred, you know him. I don't know him. But I said to myself, how can a guy this intelligent, this clever, this smart lose his main, not lose, but he sold his main love of his life, and then a dozen years later trying to get back onto the boat or into the boat to sail away again with this. And I'm saying to myself, this is almost, to me personally, like I said, I don't know Peter O'Malley. This is almost the sign of a person who's like battling some demons. Like, I hesitate to mention it. I don't get why he would do this whole scenario is strange to me.
Because I think that sometimes people retire too soon. And I think he had time on his hands, and I think he wanted back in. But the crazy thing is, again, the numbers are just, if I remember correctly, okay, when he sold the team in 1998, I will swear Fox spent less than $500 million. I think it was 400 and something million, maybe $500 million.
For the team?
I think you're right. I think they bought him for $400 million.
Oh, was it 400? Okay, well, it was some.
I think. I don't know. I don't have anything in front of me here. I'm not looking at anything. I'm just listening to you. But I did read Fred Clare's book, My 30 Years in Dodger Blue. I read it on the beach last week, and I seem to remember $395 million or $400 million, $403 million. I don't know. I would have to look it up.
When he tried to rebuy it, it would have been like 4 times that.
Yeah.
Or 3.5 times that. You know what I'm saying? So
yes, I do.
He wanted to get back into it. He really wanted to get back into it because he made an offer. Now, it wasn't all his money. I mean, he had other partners in the deal in 210 or 211. I, of course, wish he had bought him again because I just wish you had. But I think he's good for baseball. But I think the Guggenheims are in it just to make money. I think Peter wanted to make money, but I think Peter also loves baseball. And
yes, he did. I'm sure he did.
The people of L.A., and I don't think we'd be blacked out right now, 60 to 70%.
I don't think so either.
If Peter was still owning the team, that's all.
I don't think so either. I really don't. What was I going to say? So I also read this. Forgive me if I'm incorrect, and I know you guys are probably rolling your eyeballs. Everything you're saying tonight, Peter, you're guessing at. But I read, I think it was Fred Clare who said this. Someone said that nowadays, and Fred Clare wrote this book 8 years ago, 7, 8, 9 years ago, I don't know. He said nowadays baseball teams shouldn't be owned by families. they should be owned by groups. I'm not sure why he said that, but I'm pretty sure I read that in his book. There's no place for families in it anymore because of it's just the monstrous money that goes. You know, like for instance, the Dodgers in 1998, Peter's final season there, they lost $15 million. Think about that.
How did they lose so much money?
$15 million. I don't know. They lost $15 million.
Attendance.
That's
always had tremendous attendance.
The final luncheon or dinner or whatever meeting between Peter O'Malley and Fred Clare. This was after Fox had fired Fred Clare.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they fired Fred Clare is because he went on record on television and said, I did not trade Mike Piazza. I was told he was traded. Graziano traded him, the president of the team, and Fox traded him. I did not. That's why he was let go. And Peter and he had a meeting after he was fired, and Peter told him that the Dodgers had lost $15 million in 1998. So maybe when he said groups should own baseball teams nowadays, not mom and pop, not families, maybe that's what he was alluding to. It's too it's high end money. We're talking crazy money.
Big money.
Crazy money.
Absolutely.
When you know, like I can put it to players' salaries. Back in the day when Reggie Jackson signed with the Yankees, people were saying, "Holy crap, he's going to be making $500,000 or $575,000 a year." Now the minimum is $550,000.
Right.
Okay. Guys are making. Kershaw is making $38 million a year.
Yeah.
Come on. I mean, you know, back in the day when Johnny Carson was making $5 million a year, everybody thought that was outrageous and that was like a mortal sin. How could he make $5 million a year? That's crazy and blah, blah, blah. Hey, you know, this is big money.
Big
and
money.
Maybe Claire is right in saying that families no longer have any business owning these teams. If they're going to be competitive, they have to be owned by conglomerates or groups. I don't know. What are your feelings on that, Fred? Do you have any feelings on that?
Well, again, I mean, if it's one family and you need to make a deal for a player, and you indicated you lost $15 million the year before, you're going to be more careful in making any kind of deal. Where if it's split among 3 or 4 different financial people, they can probably afford it. So I probably would agree with them. I think because you can win real big and then you can lose real big. I mean, again, Peter sold the team. Let's say you said $390, whatever it was close to that, and he would have had to buy it back for like $1 billion something. So it would have been 2.5, 3 times as much. I guess the Dodgers would be making money because I guess Time Warner would have made a deal with them, but as far as television is concerned, but you never know. And a family just can't afford to go from the ultra rich to maybe just the rich. And
right.
It's a tough go. So
it's such big money.
Those comments make some sense. If you split the bill among more people,
you
can take a hit easier. And so, let's say right now, Machado. Okay, I don't think the Guggenheims will re-sign him.
You don't?
Peter O'Malley, I don't know if he'd have the money in his family to re-sign him. But if it was a group of people that really wanted to win and not just care about money, maybe they would re-sign him. So, again, my gut feeling.
You don't think they'll re-sign him?
No, I don't think they'll re-sign him.
Really?
Well,
I hope you're wrong.
They think they can do it on the cheap, and this is go back to the Jansen thing. Okay, so now they made a waiver claim for Matson. I guess he's a darn good reliever and he was one time a good starter. So, I mean, he can help them. But the point is, there were other relievers before July 31, and the Dodgers,
right.
They were super geniuses, the smartest guys in the room. So they don't make a deal. And then Jansen comes back with the heart ailment, and they've got nobody. And I went to my wife's family wedding over the weekend, and they're a lot of them are baseball fans. They live in Miami, and they live in Guatemala, but they're really big, and a lot of them are Dodger fans. And I challenged them. I said, in the past, you could name every reliever in the Dodger 25-man roster. I challenge anybody now to tell me who's the eighth inning guy, who's the seventh inning guy. I mean, it changes from day to day. And
from day to day, yeah.
And now Jansen's saying he's going to stop his pills just because he's not pitching well.
That's so stupid.
I mean, it's baseball's fun, but it's not life and death. And I think if you're Andrew Friedman and Fareed, the two guys who make the decisions in the Dodger chain, the administration, I think they made a vital mistake. They're trying to make up now to get Madsen because they realize without that, there's no chance because how many games have they lost now in the ninth inning? And
oh my God, their relief has been terrible.
I gotta believe. I despise Donald Trump, but I gotta, and people are going after him, not as hard as I would go after him. But the point I'm trying to make is there's going to be people now, like the three of us, who begin going after the Dodgers to put Jansen on the DL, and they're going to have no choice but to do the moral thing. So they have to get a reliever at this point. And of course, if you get him after August 31, he's not eligible for the playoffs. So it better be like today or tomorrow.
Yep.
Right.
Absolutely. I think before I go to bed, I'm a late going to bed guy. I stay up here on the East Coast till about 2:30 with my wife and dog. But I think before I close my eyes to go to bed tonight, the Dodgers will close that deal for Madsen. I'm pretty sure of it. I want to jump backwards, though. I want to ask Fred a question. It's good that you live out there because you're close to stuff. I can't remember this. When Peter O'Malley was spending all that money studying about a football stadium next door to Dodger Stadium to house an NFL football team, was it in fact an expansion team?
Yes.
Or was it the Raiders or the Chargers?
No, it was an expansion team. He was going for an expansion team.
Okay, now my memory sucks, so you're going to have to help me out here. Did the NFL, in fact, expand then?
No.
Oh, they didn't?
I don't believe
it. So not only didn't Peter get a team, the league didn't even expand.
Well, when the mayor says the team has to be in the Coliseum, Peter loses his power. Because,
right.
We want the team in the Coliseum or we don't want it. Because no matter what they say about it's going to be not publicly financed, it's going to be publicly financed.
To a degree.
Which means the city and the county are going to have to put up some of the dough. If it's, in the case, again, of AT&T in Arlington, when they had that first Super Bowl there, I discovered, to my chagrin, that the people had paid 45% when Jerry Jones was taking credit for building it himself. So my point is, there's always public fees when a club comes here. I don't care if they say they're paying all the dollars for the roads, for the freeways.
Well, you know what, Fred? I got to again go back to how bright Peter O'Malley is or was. In order to spend that type of money, and you said he spent, let's just say he spent $1 million, but maybe he spent more than $1 million. But let's just, for argument's sake, say he spent $1 million planning this.
Yeah.
Didn't he have any feelers out or knowledge that Mayor Reardon did not want this built and that he was spinning his wheels? How bright was Peter O'Malley?
Very bright man. I don't know. I don't know what he knew about. And it wasn't Reardon because I only lived here my whole life, but I I couldn't tell you who was mayor exactly in 94, 95, but
I remember reading that it was Mayor Reardon in Fred Clare's book. But it really doesn't matter who it was, because if you initiate plans and the guy who's going to plan this stadium wants $1 million, don't you first make sure the mayor's in your pocket?
Maybe, it's possible that they thought that since they were going to build it with non-taxpayer funds, and again, I'm kidding, that the mayor wouldn't care. I don't know. I think after thinking about it, obviously, 24 years.
Makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me, unless Peter O'Malley was a fool, and I doubt very much that Peter O'Malley was or is a fool to spend that kind of money. I think, this is what I think, and I have no basis. I think he had a handshake agreement that the mayor was going to give him a go-ahead to do that. In order for him to spend that kind of money, I think he got stabbed in the back by Mayor Reardon. I think Reardon changed his mind. I got to do research on that. I really do. I have to do research. In fact, maybe we can ask Fred Clare on Facebook. I'm a friend of his, and so are you. So are two of you. Maybe we can actually ask him. Is Reardon still alive, by the way?
I don't know. But, listen, you're telling me politicians change their mind? Never happened.
Point well taken, Fred Walin. Point well taken.
That's right.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you both for a wonderful show. You've been listening to Comfortably Zone Radio. You've been listening to not Dodgers baseball, but Dodgers football most of the night. And I want to thank my buddies Fred Walin out in Los Angeles and Ron Rabinovitz out in St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And my name is Peter Trunk. And again, until next week, gentlemen, thank you very much and a good night.
Bye,
Thank you. Good night.